Happy Sunday morning, Bears fans. I am Harrison Graham. This is another episode of Chicago Bears Now. And I said, you know what? People have been asking me. I kind of hit on this on a video a few weeks ago, but I'm going to do a full video. And I'm just going to analyze almost every move Ryan Poles has made, from his drafts, free agencies, trades, and coaching hires, and just kind of come up with a conclusion and a determination to, should he be back? Should he not? Is it somewhere in the middle still? I think it's an appropriate time to do it. The Bears have one more game left, and they got to get this coaching search really ramped up. And many people question whether or not Ryan Poles should be leading that coaching search. So we'll dive into it here. Before we do that, I'm working from home today. Wife's under the weather, so been taking care of her and my son. But I do have some time. We could do a second video later today, sometime before Sunday Night Football. If this video gets 1,500 likes or more, we'll come back. We'll do another episode. We'll either catch up on the latest news and rumors. We'll do another segment. We'll do something. So if you guys want that, hit that like button and let's make it happen. All right, let's talk first about the draft for Ryan Poles. Just analyze what he's done in the NFL draft. He's had 3 drafts now, several draft picks. And let's just go through it here. 2022 draft. His first ever pick, Kyler Gordon. Pretty good pick. Is he an all-pro? No. Good pick, though, for where they got him in the second round, number 39 overall. Has had some minor injury concerns, but I would give that more than a passing grade. Jaquan Brisker at number 48. I'd say similar. Obviously, the concussion stuff is not something Poles can control. Not a great home run pick, but a good pick. Certainly a passing grade. Velus Jones, 3rd round pick. Flop. No 4th round pick. 5th round pick, Braxton Jones. I would say that's a hit. On day 3, you get at least a serviceable left tackle. That's good value there. Dominic Robinson hasn't worked out. Zach Thomas has bounced around several different teams. I don't even think he made the Bears roster that year. Tristan Ebner, out of the league. These are all 6th round now, by the way. Doug Kramer. I mean, I guess for a 6th round pick, for the fact he's been able to stick around, he actually left briefly, then came back. I don't know. I mean, I can't say it's a good pick. It's also the 6th round, so at this point, you're kind of splitting hairs here. Tyrique Carter, I actually thought for a 7th round pick, he was okay on a different team. Elijah Hicks in the 7th round, I'd call that a hit. 7th round picks to make the team don't even happen that often. He's a decent backup safety and a good special teams player. Trenton Gill, the punter, so bad you had to draft a punter 2 years later. Okay, that first draft, not bad for not having a first round pick. 2023 draft, as we go through Ryan Poles' draft moves. This obviously included the big trade, DJ Moore. We're going to put that in a different category. They trade down from 9 to 10. They take Darnell Wright. Darnell Wright's a good player. I like him. Obviously, there's been Jalen Carter debate. I've kind of gone back and forth on that. I've defended Poles. You would expect Wright to be a little further down the road at this point. I also think people are harsh on him. Like, he's your best offensive lineman when you combine his level of play and health. Now, if Tevin Jenkins was healthy as often as Wright was, it would be more of a debate. But good pick. If Jalen Carter's a Hall of Famer, that's always going to be discussed. Would he have worked here? It's hard to say. I will say this about the whole, would he have worked? Would he have fit into this culture? Isn't that still an indictment on the Bears and on Poles a little bit? You're basically saying, like, yeah, we can't handle a player like him. So, hard to say. On the flip side, all we do is bitch about the offensive line, and they took an offensive lineman there that's been pretty solid. So, I'm not going to give that a bad grade by any means. Javon Dexter, 2nd round. Solid, not special up to this point, but a good player in the 2nd round. He's taken a jump this year, so for where you got him, pretty good. Tyrique Stevenson. Excuse me. I like the way he finished his rookie year. I like the tenacity he plays with. I still don't mind some of the edginess, but this year has been a roller coaster. He has not taken a step forward. I still think he has some talent, but up to this point, 2nd round pick, would you say you've gotten good value there? I would say you probably have not. I would say that's in the C, close to failing type of grade, but still time. We've certainly seen potential. Zach Pickens, first pick of the 3rd round. Complete flop. He was a healthy inactive last week. Not a good pick. There's a theme there. 3rd round picks. 4th round pick, Roschon Johnson. For how much they hyped up the pick, I would say that has not lived up to the billing. He's fine. I think at best he's a number 2 back, probably more of a number 3 back. Pretty good in short yardage, can catch checkdowns and screens, and okay in pass pro. Pretty decent on special teams. Nothing special. It's 4th round. You're not expecting special, but the way they hyped him up after they drafted him, this sounded like a potential future starter. Certainly not the case. Tyler Scott. I liked it at the time. Can't say you like it now. Now, I would like to see him get more opportunities, but up to this point, I think he has 19 catches in 2 seasons. Has not lived up. Again, 4th round pick, but it's one of these things where if we keep saying, well, 4th round pick, 5th round, well, you got to hit on occasionally on these, and Braxton Jones is really the only one you have. Noah Sewell, done nothing. Terrell Smith, I'd say a good backup. Excuse me. Good backup, has good traits, has injury concerns, but in the 5th round pick, 5th round, I think that's a pretty decent pick. Travis Bell, is he back on the practice squad? He might be. Can't remember, but he's done nothing. Kendall Williamson didn't make the team. Don't know where he is. All right. 2024 draft. Caleb Williams, I still like the pick. Still think the QB decision was right. That pick kind of fell into your lap via the trade, but you get credit for that. We'll see how it plays out. Up to this point, though, bit of an unknown, but everybody in the world was saying he should be the number 1 pick, so I can't criticize that one just yet. Again, though, it's Pole's job to get it right, and if he ends up being the 3rd or 4th best QB in his class, that still falls on his shoulders. Rome Odunze. I like Rome. I think he's going to be a bit good player. He's been a little more inconsistent than I would have thought. Kind of like Caleb, honestly. They've both been more inconsistent than I would have expected, but you see the potential with both of these guys. Let's see how it plays out. Kron Amagaji, 3rd round. Maybe he turns into something, but I think the process is flawed. That's a project he took in the 3rd round. Clearly, this team wasn't far enough along to take a project. I think that was a bad pick. We'll see how it ages. So far, can't give it a good pick. Torrey Taylor, he's a great punter. Clearly, you were not in position to draft a punter. Now, if he's your guy for 15 years and an all-pro for 5 or something, like, I don't think it's a horrible pick. But it's just one of those where it's like it feels like a cocky pick, does it not? Like the Bears took a punter and then proceeded to go 4-13 or 5-12. It's kind of fitting, isn't it? And then trade back into the draft, get Austin Booker. We'll see. Hasn't shown much. Kind of a developmental guy. We'll see how it goes. But that's the draft for Ryan Poles. And if you can't tell, probably going to be a longer video here. That's what the draft looks like. And I don't know, you add all that up, is it a C? You know, obviously with draft grades, some of it's incomplete. Like this year's draft, we won't have a great idea until further down the road, but I don't think you can give it more than a C. 3 whiffs in the 3rd round up to this point. Like those are picks that matter. You need to find starters there. Like 3 3rd-round picks, you should hit on 2. That's kind of how I view that. So not great for Ryan Poles. Not horrible. But also has not added many impactful players in the trenches via the draft whatsoever, or really anywhere on this team. Okay, free agency. We'll try to pick it up a little bit here. I can't go through every move, but his free agency moves have not been good. I think that's fair to say. He has not hit very often at all in free agency. I would say some hits include TJ Edwards, 3 years, $19 million, $6.5 million per year. He's a good player. He hasn't played as well this year as he did last year, but for what he makes, starting caliber linebacker in this league, solid player, that was a hit. Andrew Billings, kind of a career journeyman, comes here, finds a role, plays well. He extends him for a team-friendly deal. I would say that's a hit. Kevin Byard, fine. Like, he's better than Eddie Jackson was last year, so I guess there's that. They gave him 2 years, $15 million. We'll see how he plays next year, assuming he's back. There's not a lot though, man. You go back to that first year, and I get it. They were cash strapped. They had to get rid of some bad contracts, but like think of some of the guys they brought in here that year. Al-Qadim Muhammad, who is now actually playing good in Detroit, of course. He was terrible. Byron Pringle did nothing. That was your let's get Justin Fields another receiver. Did nothing. They let James Daniels walk that year, by the way. Became a really good starter for Pittsburgh. Got hurt this year. His first move as the GM of the Bears was to sign Larry Ogunjobi and 4 days later, had to renege on that signing because he failed the physical. By the way, he's only missed like 3 games in Pittsburgh since then. Hasn't been great by any means, but it's just kind of funny that a medical issue popped up, and yet the Steelers brought him in, and he's been fine from a physical standpoint. Just typical. You look to the next year. Nate Davis, disaster, right? Absolute disaster. You let David Montgomery walk, and a year later, you pay DeAndre Swift more than Montgomery. Swift is a fine player. Montgomery is better, and he costs less. Now, he's been extended since then by Detroit, and they paid him more than Swift makes now, but he earned that. He outplayed the contract he got, and you didn't pay him what Detroit was willing to. Tremaine Edmonds, you trade Roquan Smith because you didn't want to pay him $20 million per year, and you give Tremaine Edmonds $18 million per year. TJ Edwards has been better for a third of the cost. Not a good signing. I think you look at free agency, and look, I wanted Yannick Ngakoue to get a pass rusher. He was one of the worst pass rushers in the league based on pass rush win rate. Like, again, we can have our opinions as fans and as media, whatever you want to call us. It's up to them to make the right moves. He was terrible. He did nothing. So you look at all this, Lucas Patrick trying to patchwork center, Coleman, like offensive line in general, Nate Davis, the one big signing, horrible. Lucas Patrick couldn't play. Like, it's just not good. His free agency, I think you have to give it an F. Like, when you talk about your hits being Andrew Billings, who's a nice player, but you're like, that's what you're resting on? Andrew Billings, TJ Edwards, he's a good NFL football player. Where are the high-level blue-chip players? Like, clearly you thought Tremaine Edmonds was going to be that. Not the case. He's not even better than TJ Edwards. So I'd say pretty disappointing when you look at it from that standpoint. All right, we still got to look at his trades and obviously the coaching part of this as we go. But first, I want to tell you guys about our sponsor, Rocket Money. RocketMoney.com/Bears now is the place to go. Listen, I got going with Rocket Money about a year and a half, almost 2 years ago, and it was needed because it was around the time when our son was born. We had a lot of more bills to pay, daycare, just his birth, all the stuff that goes into having a baby, his food, his toys, all that stuff. And we had to start a budget. We had to stay on top of our finances, myself and my wife. And Rocket Money has helped us do that. They'll help you cancel any subscriptions you no longer want. They'll list them all out on one screen. You can see how much you're paying per month, and you can say, I don't want this one, I don't want this one, I don't want this one. Click cancel, follow a few extra steps. You will no longer be paying for those. Rocket Money will kind of help you get rid of those subscriptions, serve as a middleman. You can lower your bills by up to 20% by uploading a photo of your bills to the Rocket Money app. They will try to find better prices for you. You can check your credit score and just basic banking things. I think it's better than I'm not going to tell you guys what bank I use, but than my typical banking app. It's just more organized, more user-friendly, categorized spending, all of that stuff. They send you alerts on a weekly basis to stay on top of your budgets that you may set. I'm just a big fan of Rocket Money. They have saved their 5 million customers $500 million on canceled subscriptions alone. If you're a member, you can save over $700 per year with Rocket Money if you're using the full features of the app. Think what you could do with an extra $700. Go on a vacation, start a college fund, have several nice meals, whatever the case may be. RocketMoney.com/Bears now. Link is in the comments and the description. Get signed up with Rocket Money today. Okay, Ryan Poles trades. Now, technically, he's had, I think, 20 trades, but that includes, like, draft day trades and stuff, like maneuvering. Remember that first draft? He kept maneuvering, like, in the 5th and 6th round. I'm not going to focus too much on those. Let's just focus on, like, the notable player ones. All right, Khalil Mack to the Chargers for a 2nd-round pick, which turned into Jaquan Brisker, a 6th-round pick, which they later traded. Is that a wash? Khalil Mack's certainly a better player, but Poles was trying to shed some aging players and contracts. I kind of give that like in the C range. Like if Brisker didn't have the concussion issues, you'd feel better about it. But for a GM that's not done well in the trenches, you lost a premier trenches player who the next year had 17 sacks with the Chargers. Like he's still very, very good. So, I don't blame him for doing that one, but you certainly haven't replaced Khalil Mack's pass rushing production in 3 years. So I think that's more of the indictment, that part of it. But yeah, that's kind of a okay trade. Let me scroll up here. Let's see. N'Keal Harry for a 7th round pick. That he didn't do anything, but it's a 7th, so not going to care too much. This one was actually a decent value trade. The Bears traded Robert Quinn for a 4th round pick, and Quinn did nothing the rest of that year with Philadelphia, and then was out of the league. So the Bears kind of recognized he was done, which is so weird because the year before he was awesome with 18.5 sacks. The Bears drafted Tyler Scott with that pick, so that part of it has not panned out, but that was a decent value trade. Roquan Smith, 2nd round pick to Baltimore. The Bears got a 2nd and a 5th round pick that turned into Javon Dexter. Solid. Noah Sewell's done nothing. They also used some of that money they didn't pay on Roquan to pay Tremaine Edmonds and TJ Edwards. For a while, I was like, okay, you get 2 for 1. Money almost adds up the same. Tremaine is nowhere near Roquan, and TJ's a nice player. But to me, Roquan by himself outweighs TJ and Tremaine. I can't look at that and say that was a good trade. Now, if they just signed TJ Edwards and used some of that other money on trenches, offensive, defensive line, and guys that hit, I wouldn't be as critical of this trade. I don't understand trading an all-pro linebacker in Roquan Smith because you don't think he's a great scheme fit with Matt Eberflus. Roquan Smith is scheme-proof. And then signing Tremaine Edmonds 7 months later because you think he fits your scheme for 90% of the contract. Like that just doesn't compute with me. So I think that linebacker maneuvering as a whole just was not very good. And then here was the complete whiff. Chase Claypool. 32nd overall pick is what that pick turned into for Chase Claypool, who did absolutely nothing and was a net negative because of his locker room presence. I understood why he did it. He wanted to give Justin Fields the fairest shake possible. Byron Pringle and those other, just Band-Aid wide receivers they signed in free agency weren't cutting it. Let's give Fields a big play weapon. Didn't work out. Like sometimes I understand, but to give the Steelers basically the last pick in the first round, technically it was the first pick in the second round. That's a tough one to shake. I mean that really really is. Now all GMs miss, but these are adding up here. It's not like that is a glaring miss. Then he's had a bunch of hits here. That has not been the case. Now, easily his best move as the Bears GM was the trade with Carolina. He trades the number 1 pick for DJ Moore, the number 9 pick, which he later traded down to 10 to get Darnell Wright. 61st pick, which got traded up to get Tyrique Stevenson. And they still have... It turned into Caleb Williams the next year as well because you got a future first-round pick also. And you still have Carolina's 2nd round pick. Now, jury's still out on some of these guys. Tyrique Stevenson, we'll see. I think next year's a big year for him. Darnell Wright, good player. Could have had Jalen Carter. We'll be debating that forever. I still am a Caleb Williams believer. I think it's way too early, but we'll see. I still think that was a very, very good trade for the Bears. Now, will it age as well as we would have hoped? That remains to be seen. I would say it's soured slightly, but I still think it was a good trade. Justin Fields to the Steelers for a 6th round pick that could have turned into a 4th. It is not turning into a 4th. It'll be a 6th. It's hard to have a harsh or to grade this one fairly. Had he traded him closer to when the season ended, could he have gotten more? That's hard to say. The league told us what Fields' value was, and that was a day 3 pick. So I know the Fields-Williams debate's going to go on forever, especially if Caleb doesn't work out. I don't view it that way. The league told us what Justin Fields was viewed as, and that was as a backup based on his draft compensation. Hopefully he pans out and becomes a starter somewhere down the road, but obviously you would have wanted more than a 6th. There was reports that they could have gotten slightly more, but they wanted to do right by Fields. I think some people were like, oh, he could have gotten a 3rd. Like, no, maybe you just get a 5th instead of a 6th. But, yeah, that's one of those where it is what it is. Probably waited too long to trade him, but, I don't think you would have gotten like a 2nd round pick when the season ended either. Okay, what else do we have here? Couple more. Montez Sweat, obviously. I'm still going to give this a passing grade, but it's not a home run the way it's aged, especially when guys like Jonathan Grenard were available in free agency, Danielle Hunter were available in free agency, and they've had much better years this year. I'm hopeful that Montez Sweat was just battling that foot issue this year. He comes back strong next year because not only did you trade for him, you paid him almost $100 million. And 1 year into that new contract, he's not lived up to it. Now, last year on the fly, he transformed this defense. There's no disputing that. This year, he's been banged up. I'm willing to see how this plays out, but that trade that was viewed as a really good one has definitely lost some steam. I don't think there's any question. Here's another flop. Ryan Bates, 5th-round pick for a player that basically gave you 0 this year. And his future is very much in doubt. Arthritic shoulder, a concussion that finished his season. He's still in the protocol, had to be put on IR. I don't know what Ryan Poles' obsession with Ryan Bates is, but it's weird at best and not very good overall. Keenan Allen for a 4th. I'm fine with it still. Has Keenan played up to his Hall of Fame standard? Probably not. But I don't think it's some awful trade. I think he's probably helped out Caleb Williams. You let him walk in all likelihood unless he takes a team-friendly contract. You get a comp pit back possibly. I don't think that's the end of the world. I'm not going to give it an A, but I don't think it's some awful trade. Had you given up a 2nd for him or something, yeah, it'd be a bad trade. But 4th-round pick for a productive player, vet to help your rookie quarterback, I don't think it's bad. I'm okay with that one at the end of the day. And then a couple minor ones right before the season. 6th-round pick for Darrell Taylor. He's had 3 sacks. He's been okay. Rotation guy for a 6th-rounder. It's a fringe passing grade. Chris Williams has actually been decent as a rotation guy. I think he has 3 sacks as a rotational defensive tackle. But again, that was a late-round pick swap. So I don't have too much concern about those. Those don't make or break you as a general manager. All right, you add all that up. I'll go C+. I think the volume of trades he probably missed on more than hit. But the Hall of Carolina still carries weight. I'll go C+. If Caleb pans out, that trade will be one that transformed the franchise. So still holding out hope for that. Way too early to say it will or it won't. So C+ for trade. So to recap so far, draft C, free agency F, trades C+. Add it all up, probably a failing grade or a fringe C-. Maybe you're right on the cusp of getting to graduate from college grade. All right. Coaching hire moves. Now, this gets muddy a little bit because all kinds of debate. How much power did he have when they hired Matt Eberflus? Well, here's what we know. When Ryan Poles got hired, 3 finalists at head coach had been determined. Colts defensive coordinator Matt Eberflus, who he ultimately chose. Cowboys defensive coordinator Dan Quinn, who I would have chosen based on these 3. He's now the Commanders head coach, has him in the playoffs in year 1. And lastly, Jim Caldwell, former Lions head coach. I don't even know if he's in the league. The fact he was a finalist feels bizarre. But regardless, we'll never know fully how much power he had. But I did see Ryan Poles for years go to bat publicly for Matt Eberflus. Was he told to do that? I don't know. I think at minimum he liked him. I think he did believe in him. I really, really did. And then, even if you want to say, okay, let's give him a pass for Eberflus, even bringing him back last year, which I find I have a hard time doing. Like, you don't have enough voice and power to tell Kevin Warren and George, this guy isn't the guy. We need to go take a swing for Jim Harbaugh. Like, I'm sorry. Like, if that's very troubling. And I know the structure of the organization and George being cheap and all that stuff is all fair criticism, but still, I think he could have pushed harder to get Flus out last year if he wanted to. Didn't do it. But let's say we give him a pass for all that. I don't, but let's say we do. Ryan Poles is on record on a podcast and telling the Tribune in an article Dan Wiederer did recently that they were blown away by Shane Waldron's communication. I don't know if Shane Waldron hired a doppelganger to do the interview for him. He is not a great communicator, at least publicly. Now, maybe in the classroom behind closed doors, he is, but we all heard reports of he was slow getting the play and communicating it into Caleb's helmet. Players had concerns with him going back to training camp, and this goes back to Ryan Poles too. Recently, or on Thursday in his pregame hit with ESPN 1000, He was asked about these slow starts, and he said there are issues stemming back to training camp, things that weren't addressed. Are you, as the general manager, not allowed to step in and help address those issues? Unless he learned about these issues recently, which, again, it's his job to know about these issues. I can't defend him on the coaching. You add up all the coaches that have been on the staff. This has been one of the worst coaching staffs starting in 2022 through now in the NFL. I think Thomas Brown's a bright guy. He's not ready to be a head coach, but he'll get picked up as an OC or a running backs coach or whatever. But he's not ready to be a head coach. And I would say, even in the booth, he's probably an average play caller. But I think he's a smart young guy. Leadership skills are there. Okay, cool. Well, you didn't even pick him to be your OC. He was your pass game coordinator. You kind of lucked into him being on your staff. And that's the best you got. And we just saw firsthand how he's not ready to be a good head coach with his late game mismanagement against the Seahawks. Eberflus is a joke. Alan Williams was awful, and then he gets fired for HR reasons, rumors of the FBI having to get involved. We still don't know what happened there. Another coach, David Walker, had to be relieved of his duties due to an HR violation. None of the position coaches seem worth a damn. The quarterback's coach, who's now with the Saints under Getsy himself, awful. I think some of the positional defensive coaches are probably fine, but none of these guys are getting better jobs next year, right? It's not like your tight ends coach Jim Dre is gonna be an OC next year. Maybe he gets a tight ends job. Chris Morgan, he sucks. The offensive line coach, he is awful. So I'm not giving him a pass on Flus, but even if you want to give him a slight pass, how can it be anything but an F? We've witnessed some of the worst coaching the last 3 years that I can ever remember in the National Football League. So that's how I look at that. So again, C for draft, F for free agency, C+ for trades, F for coaching. You add that up, that's a failing grade, in my opinion. You're 3 years in, 3 wins to 7 wins, back to 4. You're 14-36, man. You are what your record says you are. Even if you give up, even if you want to say the first year doesn't count, okay. You were 3-14. You're still 11-22 the last 2 years. That's not even competitive. That is not even competitive. The point is, the trade was awesome. There's been a couple decent minor moves. There's been way more misses than hits. And do we trust him to hire the right coach? Even with Kevin Warren involved, which, do we trust him? I don't know. And hit on several players this offseason, especially in the trenches with the cap space and draft picks you have. I don't see how you could. I don't see how you could trust him to do those things. Because up to this point, he has been unable, English, to do so. So, long video. Sorry for dragging on. I really just wanted to outline that. I've been asked by people to break this down. I think the shocking truth is that they should probably get a new GM. Do you want Ryan Poles fired? Yes or no? Let me know in the comment section down below if you want Poles fired or not. I think you'd be better off. I don't know if they're going to fire him. Time will tell. Hit that subscribe button. Like the video. 1,500 likes. We'll be back for a second video later today. Bear down. We'll see what happens, folks.